So there was a lot of people involved. It was a very, very huge community effort.
Before
Yeah,
and then you got to the Space
everything just
Center.
fell right into place. You know, this led to this, which led to this, which led to that.
Welcome back to Drydock Talk. In today's episode, we continue our fascinating conversation with Victor Williamson. We will first explore the tragic Challenger accident and how it shaped the creation of the Space Center. Then we will shift gears to the incredible effort behind the Voyager, diving into the people, grants, and innovative designs that brought it to life. Stay with us for a thoughtful journey through Vic's history and the pivotal moments that helped shape the start of the Space Center and eventually what it is today.
So I'm just trying to think of the timeline here, because you graduated in 83, started your class in 83, had those simulations going in your classroom, and you said that before Super Saturdays you kind of expanded them, like the simulations, to be a little bit bigger. How was that?
That was for club meetings.
Okay, yeah. So for
After school
Astronauts
club meetings. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those would run for, I imagine, like 2 or 3 hours?
No, just an hour.
Just an hour?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until Super Saturdays that you got into the 4 or 5
Yes.
hour range?
Mm-hmm.
What was the longest Super Saturday you've ever had?
They ran from like 10 in the morning till 6.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
a good long time.
Yeah.
So through all that, as you were building up this program in January of 1986, that's when the Challenger broke apart when launching shortly before reaching space. What do you remember about that time?
Well, we were geared to watch all of Crystal McAuliffe's lessons, and so as a club, we were all ready to go with this, with the program. I wasn't watching it live. I was teaching math when the shuttle launched, and the class next to me had the teacher that was teaching that class. Those were the days when we were specializing. So I taught math, and I was teaching reading, and another teacher. The 3 6th grade teachers were doing different specialization subjects.
Yeah, so the classes would rotate between.
Yeah, so the
all three
class
of you.
next to me, they were watching live, and so a lot of the kids were in there seeing it. I was continuing with my math class, and then they came in and said what had happened, and I don't. I remember it. I just don't remember what I did. I don't remember. I remember talking to the kids, and I don't know if I pulled a TV in, because I think we only had one TV, and it was in her room. And I think I didn't want it to be a huge, big deal at that exact moment, because it would be a real disruption to the day. So we just sort of kept it, very low key, and went on with our lessons and just let it play out. But we also didn't know all the facts either. We just knew it had exploded.
Yeah.
Everyone anticipated they were dead, and so, yeah.
How did you feel about that time?
Oh, well, sad.
Yeah. 'Cause you had
It was a
prepared for
shock.
these lessons.
But we always knew there was the huge risk. I just kept waiting for every launch for an explosion to occur.
Yeah.
I just knew you couldn't run a space program for that length of time without having a tragedy.
Yeah.
And so we were overdue for one.
And the last major tragedy, I think, was it Apollo 13?
Apollo 13, but that ended good.
Yeah.
But it was still a real nip and tuck. But it was the fire in the Apollo capsule, where the astronauts burned to death in the capsule.
Yeah.
And then there was Apollo 13, And then there were some close calls with the shuttle. You know, there were some issues that got resolved. But so when it exploded, I was surprised, but not shocked surprised, because I had anticipated at some time there would be something like this. Because it's the way it is with every organization, NASA as well. When you're having a lot of success and everything seems to be going fine, that's when something's going to go wrong, because sometimes people expect it'll always go like this, and people begin expecting more. And that's what the Thiokol engineers were under pressure to get the thing launched. And safety was sort of put in the background because nothing had happened before. So push it. And that's when they got their wake-up call. But as we were building the Space Center, that's when I decided that it would be named after Krista McAuliffe. So.
And was that to continue her legacy, or?
Well, to finish the job that she'd started, you know, to excite kids about space, excite them about learning, excite them about to learn and math and science. And so it was just to continue the job that she had originally intended to do. And so that's why I thought we would name it after her.
That's really cool. I really appreciate the time that you've taken
on
all of this. I'm not sure at all if there's been a record from about the 1983 from when you started teaching to 1990. It almost seems like everything just kind of started with 1990s, Voyager's open, let's go. And so I was really eager to get this kind of history before.
Everything just fell right into place. You know, this led to this, which led to this, which led to that, which led to that.
And why do you think that is?
It's called being aware of your situation and striking when the iron's hot. You know, sometimes fate arranges things in your direction, and you've got to be smart enough to see the stars line up and then move. Because if you don't, you're out. And I think I was just smart enough to see the direction of things and realizing now was the time, if you're going to do it right now. Because we had that in 1983, that report came out, A Nation at Risk, that Ronald Reagan commissioned. And that's when they looked at schools nationwide and discovered that we have a huge deficiency in our math and science when compared with other countries, which put the nation at risk, hence A Nation at Risk. And the report was so startling to the country, what they found, that it shocked people into waking up and realizing that we had to do something to turn this around in our schools. And so money started freeing up. And the money was geared towards anything that had to do with math and science. And it was, grants were coming open, and the Department of Education opened up the Krista McAuliffe Fellowship, which was a program that brought $30,000 with it if you became a Krista McAuliffe Fellow. And so seeing all of this happen and realizing that we already had this in place, you know, I saw this as a great opportunity to strike, because it may not happen again.
And so you were able to, like you said, get a lot more money than you were expecting.
Yes. I mean, I tell people I had to lie to get the money, but I really didn't, because I really did think that we would open up a space program. I didn't expect to be doing the science fiction missions. You know, the grants were all written that we would do real space flights, like that shuttle in Arizona. We would still do our little sci-fi things on the side, but the main thrust of the simulator would be real space missions. You know, futuristic still, but we're not going to be putting in battles or any sci-fi stuff, really. We're just going to go out and take a look at Mars and the asteroid belt. And so all of the grants were written with that in mind, integrating some math and science into the program. And so that's the reason why some of the money came in, just because that was the approach that everything was written towards. And that's how I opened the center. You know, when the Voyager first opened, we were taking trips to Mars, and we were looking at Mars features and stuff like that. And so I didn't lie when I wrote the grants. It's what I intended to do. I was just going to do science fiction on the side with our club.
Yes.
And use the simulator as our little club ship.
Like Super Saturdays.
Those
but just
types
with
of
that.
things, yes. But when I realized that I just couldn't get the excitement for learning that I had when I was doing the science fiction stories, you know, when you've got a group of kids coming in for a field trip, they've got to have something more than just, this is Mars, and look at this great valley, and here's Olympus Mons, and okay, now push this button, and that'll turn the ship around, and we'll head home.
Yeah.
It just wasn't flying. It wasn't. And I remember sitting down with the principal. So that's one of the few memories I have. You know, Stan came into the briefing room, and I said, I've got to change this. I said, this is not working. We're not getting the excitement. We're not getting the hurrah. It's not meeting its goal. And he said, well, what do you want to do about it? And I said, well, I could start telling the science fiction stories I tell with the overhead projector. And I said, what do you think about that? And he said, well, you make the call. And so I said, okay, we're going to put a Romulan warbird in at the end of the trip to Mars and see what happens. And so the Romulans showed up as the kids were leaving Mars, and they had a little confrontation with the Romulan, and that went over really well.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought, okay. So then I thought, let's just go all sci-fi and see what happens. And so then I wrote the first story, Epsilon, with a planet which was half Federation, half Klingon. You know, it was, it mimicked East Berlin and West Berlin.
Oh, I see.
So we had, or East Germany, West Germany. And so, you know, with the boundary around the planet, and each side took care of its own side. And there were strict rules on approaching the planet and how long you could stay there and what orbital track your ship had to take and what you could get involved in and what you couldn't get involved in. And so the kids, it was a diplomatic story where the kids had to fly into Epsilon, and they had to go in at a certain track and go into a certain orbit, you know, and there were troubles on the planet because of the wheat. There was things going on the Klingon side, poisoning the wheat that was being used on the other side, because the Klingons were trying to get a revolution going on the other side to unify the planet under Klingon rule, which was a violation of the treaty.
Yeah.
And so, and they were also putting nuclear weapons on their side, which was also against the treaty. So they were arming their side, and we discovered that, which brought us into the Cuban Missile Crisis of '62.
Yes.
When the Soviet Union was putting atomic weapons, or planning on putting atomic weapons in Cuba, which almost led to the World War III. So the kids saw that, and they came in and intervened, and they launched the nuclear weapons in the story.
Oh.
And the ship shoots them down. And then, I don't remember, I'd have to reread the script, how it resolved after that point. But that was the very, very first mission that was told after we switched from the Mars flight to that story.
And was that in 1990 that you wrote that story, or was that sometime later?
Epsilon was one of those club missions.
Okay.
So I just took the club mission that I liked, that I thought had some good curriculum points in it, and rewrote it for the Voyager. So that was a club flight.
Okay. So you had built the Voyager initially for field trips, for the intention of having other schools come in and do these types of flights.
The
as
original
field trips.
intent was that I never thought I would be doing this full time. So I built the ship with the intention that I would have in-service classes and train teachers how to use the simulator, and that then teachers could bring their classes and run them themselves.
I see.
That was the program, because I didn't think there'd be any way in the world I would be allowed to run it full time. And so I was going to continue teaching and then train teachers in in-service and let them run their own little programs and things. So
Yeah.
the Voyager was to be a versatile tool for teachers that wanted to do it. But the
Again,
first,
similar to Clear Creek, where you kind of had the maintaining staff, but it was the
Yeah.
teachers who were up there.
yeah. And so, that's what we did. Well, that was the plan.
Yeah.
US West, though, gave me a full sabbatical for our opening year, which I
Oh,
wasn't
really?
anticipating. So, yeah, that was the phone company back then. We didn't have all these different phone companies.
Yeah.
It was US West.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, you have a full sabbatical. So we will pay the district your full salary and benefits, and you are free now to run this for 1 year to try to get it up and running.
Wow.
And so that gave me a full year of full-time working in the ship to get everything started and missions written and get things rolling. And then after that year, we went to the district and said, what do you want to do? And the district approved a half contract. So I would have to teach. They would bring in an intern, and I would supervise the intern, and the intern would teach my sixth grade class, and then I could run the simulator. So for 1 or 2 years, we had interns teaching sixth grade here, and I supervised the interns and ran the Space Center. Then after a couple of years, we went to the district and said, this is getting too big. Field trips are coming in all the time now. It's a very popular field trip site. And then the board decided to make it a full-time teaching position.
Okay.
So
Wow.
that's how that evolved.
And so that started in about 93 or so? Or?
Well, the first year, 1990-91,
Yeah.
was my sabbatical year.
Mm-hmm.
And then 91-92 would have been an internship year.
Yeah.
Probably 92-93 also an internship year.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it was the year after that, I think, is when I became full-time without me having to supervise an intern.
Yeah. But you still taught some math classes on the
But
side
I
as
still
well.
taught for the first 2 years while I had an intern. I had to teach some too, so I taught math in the morning, then the field trips would arrive. And as soon as the field trip left, then I would get my social studies class that would come into the briefing room. So I was teaching math for 1 hour at the beginning of the day, and then history for about 45 minutes at the end of every day. And so those were rough years, because that's a lot of work. I'm teaching math and history and running the program.
Yeah.
But then once it became a full-time position, I didn't have to do that anymore, but then I wanted to keep teaching
Yeah.
because I needed to develop a relationship with the sixth graders so I could get them wanting to come in and help volunteer with us. And so I taught the advanced class, math class, and then the kids would know me, I would know them, and it would be kind of a motivation for them to come in and help run the program.
Yeah.
And so we relied on the sixth graders all the way up until I left. The sixth graders provided all of our daytime flight actors and help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they did a pretty good job. Some were good, some weren't, but it gave us kids to play acting parts at least.
Yeah. And you'd have some that would eventually become staff as well.
Yes. Yeah. They would. Then they had an opportunity, if they worked during the day, they could come in and help with overnight camps and summer camps and stuff like that.
Yeah. So were you still running the Young Astronauts program during this time? Because at some point in time that seemed to have stopped.
That's a good question. I don't remember when it ended. It would have ended in the 90s.
Yeah.
But the program actually just disbanded and stopped sometime in the 90s anyway. I think they just ran out of grant money or whatever. So the program came to an end on its own.
On a
But
national
I
level.
think I just I couldn't run a club and the center because I was under that obligation to raise my own budget.
Yeah.
And so knowing that we would need constant supply of equipment and repairs, I had to do more than field trips, hence the private flights.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought in some money because I couldn't charge enough for field trips. I could only charge exact running costs for field trips. So we had to do more. So we opened up for private flights, and then we opened up for overnight camps. And those two things, and then the summer camps, those three things brought in our operating budget every year. And so...
And it was with that that you eventually started expanding.
Yes, and with that money coming in, we were able to... the Odyssey was built by U.S. West, from a grant from U.S. West. So the Odyssey came in like 95. And that was U.S. West. That was ship 2. And then all the other spaceships were paid for from our own funds.
Okay, wow.
So we were able to generate enough money.
The Magellan was that also purely the Space Center, or was
Well, the Magellan was the Magellan was the school's computer lab. And so when the district came in and said, we're going to be putting in all new computers, that's when the principal, Dan, I don't remember his last name. Anyway, Dan suggested that we just turn the Magellan into another set. And then we could use it for overnight camps and private flights. But during the day, it would be the school's computer lab. And so we had the money to do all that. But the computers were provided by the district because it was a computer lab. So the Magellan's computers were all district. And then we had to do everything else with the ship, and the building the set and the control room equipment we had to buy as well. And so,
but that's quite a hefty price tag off of just not needing to pay.
But
the
we always
computers.
had the money because every time we opened, we always made money. We never ran a program that didn't run in the black, so there was always money coming in. You just had to rely a lot on volunteer labor, hence the volunteer club. Because the sixth graders provided all the original volunteers. And then my young astronaut club members were also the volunteers originally that would help with other things. And then we had a lot of kids who would come on field trips and were asking, can we take part in this? So then we opened it up to other kids. And so other volunteers from other schools started coming in.
And that's how the Voyager program kind of started, Voyager Club. At what point in time did you have your first non-volunteer staff member, or I guess non-sixth grade staff member to help you in the simulator?
That was Bill and Mark.
And did they come on right at the beginning, or were they?
We were running a couple weeks into the program, and there was a newspaper story about us. And Bill and Mark lived in Salt Lake, and they read the paper and saw it.
Which paper was it, out of curiosity?
I don't remember.
Okay, because I might go look that up.
They saw this story, and they called me, and I said, come on down and see what we're doing. And they came dressed in their Star Trek uniforms, because they both were in a Star Trek club. And they showed up in their Star Trek uniforms, and they stood at the back of the bridge and just watched. And at the end, they said, well, we can help. What help do you need? And Bill said, I can do some videotape work for you because I can definitely see you need it. And I said, sure. And Mark said, I can come help, And so Mark would come in and help. Then they started coming in because they worked during the day. They came in and helped with overnight camps. So that's how they started. So they would come in on whatever Fridays they were available. And they would help run the overnighters. And then,
so would they do the flight directing themselves, or were you still there?
No, I always did the flight directing, but they would do different things. Like Bill would play the admiral, and he would do his admiral bit, and so Bill would be working second chair and playing admiral and phone calls and stuff like that. And Mark would be doing other things, like he would run and get the pizza, and he would also help with different things. And
essentially bridge supervisor, but not always.
They just did whatever was needed, really. They just, what they saw a need and they went and did it, and they took care of it. And then when the Odyssey opened, Dave was the flight director, and then Brian Hawkins. And Mark started flying the Odyssey, I think, at that point. And they were helping, I think they helped with field trips. Again, my memory of the 90s is real bad. You've got to talk to people like Kyle, and Bill's got an excellent memory. His memory is sharp. He remembers everything.
Yeah.
I don't, but yeah, so they just kind of got into it, and they were the first non-central volunteers. And then
Because Bill eventually became the school's
computer lab teacher.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so he got a job with a district. And as for kids, non-central students, our very first actual non-central student volunteers, I just don't remember. That would have been a good thing to remember, who that first person was.
I'm sure if you dig through some pictures or things like that, you might get it.
I didn't take a lot of pictures back then. Too expensive.
I guess that's true. Film.
You had to buy film. And, yeah.
And so I'm actually, another curious thing that I had as you were going about how the Voyager had started. Who designed it? Because and how did you come to that design? Because there's one thing to say, hey, you've just kind of assembled the classroom desks where it is, and you decided to go a full 2 stories with the thing with, I think, around 20 or 30 computers, at least at that time, and a bathroom and a kitchen and tons of sleeping quarters. How did you arrive at that design?
So I drew up a whole bunch of different designs, and I took them to Ed Sanderson, and he was a parent of I taught all of his kids, and he did house plans. So I took all of my drawings to him and said, what do you think? And so he designed the actual simulator. And then I took his plans, and I went to the district architect, because the district always had an architect on hire. And I went to him and showed him the plans, and he added what needed to be added to the plans.
For piping, electrical,
all that stuff.
Things.
And then we had our set. And I have no idea where those plans are today. I would love to have those original blueprints. I don't know where they're at, but yeah. So it was Ed Sanderson.
Did you hold on to those, or were they possibly sent to a builder? Or?
I have no idea. They may be in a district cupboard somewhere as a set of those plans. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea what happened to them. They were rolled up in a tube, and they could be, I don't know, with the old building gone now, I just don't know.
Yeah.
I lost track of those a long time ago, but I think I still have some of the original drawings I made on graph paper of what I thought would be a good bridge design. And then Ed took it from there and made it the different levels and drew all that out.
Did you kind of get what you were hoping for from what you designed?
We had to change it, of course. I had everybody facing the walls. So the bridge, kind of like Next Generation, you have everybody on the bridge of the Voyager, you've got the people in the back facing away from the main viewer. And so my bridge design had everybody working at a wall, looking walls, but we still had that. The captain was facing that way, and the front stations were facing that way, but all the back stations were wall facing.
Kind of like security ended up being as well.
Yeah, and the captain was all the way at the very bottom of the bridge, where the phone used to be, down there at the lowest part of the bridge. That's where the captain chair originally was, not up at the top. Those were different stations up there around the back. And so then when the floor was laid, and then I would go up and put chairs in different places, I realized that the people in the back couldn't even see the tactical screen under the big TV on the wall. And so then we had to put in the platforms so they would get high enough where they could see the tactical screen. So the platforms were put in. And then I also realized then that I can't have them facing a wall, because they need to see. I need everybody forward. So the platforms had to be designed big enough where the desk could be out, because they were just going to be against the wall. So the desks had to come out so
Yeah.
people could sit behind the desks facing the main viewer. So all of that was changed on the fly, which is against code, we've discovered years later, because the steps are too high. Those
Oh, yeah.
platforms, the step had to be this high, and we put them this high, too much of a step up.
It's like 2 inches or something like that.
They were off by something, but
Yeah.
everybody just said, oh, you've got all these things people can hold on to get up and down.
Yeah.
It's not
And
that
ADA
big of a
compliance
deal.
wasn't too much of a
No,
concern back then.
I don't know why that never was a thing, but nobody ever questioned. Well, they said, what are you going to do with wheelchairs? And I just said, well, we'll just get them on the bridge up the steps. We'd done it before, just boom, 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 and you're on the bridge.
Yeah.
And that was okay with everybody up until, the very end, when they said, we really can't keep going like this. We really do need to get this all compliant.
Yeah.
And so then the Voyager couldn't be remodeled. Just the way it had been built, it just was impossible. It would have cost a fortune to remodel that ship, which was an impossibility and a waste of money, especially now that we knew the school would be tore down a few years after that.
Yeah.
Just a total waste of money. But
Only about 7 years.
yeah, so the changes were made on the bridge to where it was then.
Wow. And even through the years, it's changed periodically. 'Cause,
Changed a lot.
The engineering station was changed. I think the captain and first officer station was changed a little bit, as well as that nook in the corner.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that all changed when we built the new furniture in 2000,
okay.
when all new furniture was built with the new IMAX.
Yes.
So all of that changed with the new furniture. So
That's cool. Well, I actually, this has gone past the amount of questions that I prepared. Is there anything specifically between 1983 to 1990 that you don't think we covered that you could expand on more?
Not really. I mean, I did have to do a lot of research building the ship. I mean, I flew to a couple of different Challenger centers because they had come up after the Challenger tragedy. So I went and visited the Challenger Center in Houston, and there was another one in Sacramento. And so I went in, wherever I found that there was somebody doing a space simulation, I would go there to watch what they were doing. And there was a spaceship in Salt Lake run by John Barranca, and he's passed since then, but he ran a spaceship simulation at a high school. Hills, isn't there a high school in Jordan District? Starts with a hill. Highland?
Highland Hills or Hillcrest or something like that?
Yeah, there's a high school up there. I don't remember what the name of it was, but John Barranca ran a space simulation program for high school students. So I went up and we watched that. And then, there was a lot more research put into what we could do and what we couldn't do on the ship. Hence, I got the idea that we would be the science ship, because I saw what the Challenger centers were doing, and then I saw what others were doing. Then I thought, well, we'll just replicate it. Hence, we went with that approach.
Yeah.
But they all had a lot of money. Those Challenger centers had a lot of money for sets and equipment and everything else that we couldn't do. So there was just a lot of legwork that had to go in.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the trip to Apple in Cupertino.
Yes.
Because the big decision, the other big decision I had to make was, do I go with dials and switches or computers? Because I originally wanted the Voyager to be all dials and switches.
Yeah.
And that's why we had that huge black box in the control room, with the lights on it, that ginormous box. It's because that's where all of the lights were going to be that would tell us what they were doing with their switches on the bridge. So we could just glance at the box to see if they'd switched the right button.
Yeah.
And so, but then I talked to a lot of Apple, to whatever Apple executives came out for some reason. I don't remember what. I think Apple had people over to the district, because the district bought so many Apple computers that the big salesman would come out And we brought him out, and I showed him everything we were doing. And he said that, they could help, and they donated several Mac Pluses and the 2FX machine they donated.
Yeah.
And then, I told him, this is my dilemma. And he said, well, he suggested that we not do dials and switches just because of the cost involved. And he said, if you do computers, you can always upgrade and change the appearance of things.
Yeah.
And so that's when they offered to send me to Cupertino and teach me HyperCard over one weekend. So I could at least create the initial set of controls.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of people involved in getting it originally up and running.
Wow.
So it was a very, very huge community effort with a lot of people involved.
Yeah.
So,
My hope is to go and interview as many people as I can.
well, that'd be awesome.
To spark your memory and just record all that. So that's really cool.
Have them all say what a crazy idea it was.
This young whippersnapper.
But anyway, there you have it.